money doesn't make the world go round. That's not the be all end all at the end of the day, that your integrity, your reputation, your team, how everybody feels, it's those moments that define you.
Hi, all. Welcome to Business Briefs, where you get bite-sized legal and business advice from not just me, but also my amazing guests. Today, I have Sarah Magruder with us. She is the owner and founder of Savvy Oil and Gas Consulting. I am really excited to have her, not only because she's like a super genius in her space, but also because she is a local Houstonian, just like me, and I love meeting community members. We were just chatting about that. So welcome, Sarah, to Business Briefs.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have you because you have absolutely made a space for yourself in an industry that is predominantly male-dominated industry. But before we get there, tell me, 60-second elevator pitch. What do you do and why do you do it?
Sure. 60-second elevator pitch would be, we help people. That's what we do. And we find money. So we're very niche space of severance tax and federal royalties. So we're on the back end of accounting for oil and gas E&P companies. And severance tax is the state and local tax imposed on anything severed from the ground. So oil and gas falls under that. Every state has different regulations for that, different exemptions, different rates. So that's our specialty, is we go in, make sure companies are in compliance, find any money they may have under or overpaid, and then help them to do better going forward. So we really cover a lot of gamuts of our space, and it really is a catch-all for everything in oil and gas accounting. So while the fun stuff may be the drilling and the geology and, bringing the oil out of the ground, somebody's got to account for it and then steward that money.
Wow. And honestly, how did you find this niche? Like, where did you find this gap and how did you fill it?
It's a long story that harkens back to Enron and Arthur Andersen and them having to sell off their individual business units that were contingency based, such as sales tax, severance. And the state and local tax company I went to work for randomly right out of college happened to buy a severance tax one, and it was oil and gas, and I was interested. They asked me to join the team, and I just landed in it just by chance, really. I didn't know what area or where I wanted to go. And once I got in it, I loved it. And to your point of legal coming into this, there were a lot of statutes that were put in place around this back in 2001 when I graduated. And so I was just in the right place in the right time to really learn and grow with these things from inception as they grew up. It's one of those things where when you get in a niche space, sometimes you get pigeonholed into it, but I like being pigeonholed into this because I do feel like in order to do this job, you really have to understand the breadth of everything. So even though I'm focused on this niche, I still have an understanding of a larger process. And then it's also very gratifying to help people to find money that could have been lost and to help people put processes in place to do it better going forward.
Absolutely. So you were working for another company. So then what made you start your own business?
Yeah, so about 4 years ago, and some would say the timing was poor because after my first year of business is when COVID hit. And so to start a company and then survive COVID, luckily we're accountants, so we do a lot of work behind a computer, which can be done from anywhere. It's what we do requires people. And so starting my own business was really a factor of wanting to do things my way. I had a little bit different approach than most traditional consultants. In our space, it was a very contingency driven model. Go back and find savings. Don't tell anyone how to find them so that you can continue to do that. And I'd been the client on the other side because I worked in industry for 10 years. And, what was frustrating me is I'm a people person. So I become friends with my clients. A lot of them work for me now, at my company. And I knew I could help them by showing them what was going wrong in their systems or help put them some things in place to go forward. Again, that's not a very popular consulting model. So in order to do that and kind of play by the rules that you want to set, you almost have to start your own company, and then you can pick your clients, you can pick how you do business, you can choose which ways you go. And I really feel like you have to listen to your clients and what they're telling you they need instead of going in saying, here is one service I can provide.
Mhm.
It's going, what do you need help with? And being able to pivot and do whatever anybody needs and grow my practice and my company based on that. You don't have that opportunity when you're in a already established company that may have their own, setups and expectations. And so I don't know. I kind of tell people I'm a little bit of a wild Mustang. I wanted to be free and not be harnessed by structure. And so it's a decision I do not regret one bit.
I love that because you call yourself a wild Mustang. But with that being said, you've definitely made a name for yourself in the industry. Last year and this year, you've won awards and accolades. To name a couple, you've gotten the 2023 Oil and Gas Investor 25 Influential Women in the Energy. I mean, that's huge. And then on top of that, last year, you received the Trailblazer Award from the Greater Houston Chamber of Commerce, which by no means is a small feat. It is absolutely a space that you have made for yourself. And I think a lot of that also goes to the fact that you're staying true to the way you want to run your business and not afraid of what the industry norms are. And I think a lot of times, and just being from my own personal experience, is that I also am doing something totally different from the industry norms. And sometimes, I don't know about you, but I feel a little like daunted, like, gosh, am I doing it the right way? Should I even ask about this? Is someone going to laugh at me if I ask this question? Like, they're gonna be like, you should already know this. And so in the industry, right, amongst your peers. And so when you first started, and even when you were working for another company, how did you make that space for yourself? What were some things that, or maybe some challenges that you had, and how did you overcome them, especially with the mindset?
There's a lot of answers to those questions. I think that the first thing is you have to have an inner fortitude and a drive to do that. You also have to have a little bit of courage. And one of the books I read right before I started my company was Daring Greatly by Brene Brown. And I feel like sometimes certain books throughout your life land in front of you at a perfect time when you really need them for whatever reason. And that one just kind of encompassed that, I could either stay on the path of comfort and chug along for the rest of my career, or I could take a leap and try and do things my way and see if it worked. To do that, you really had to go all in on it. I mean, you have to, starting a business is something nobody can prepare you for, tell you about. You have to go on your own journey. And I mean, it is hard. Every day is hard. And figuring things out the hard way, there's a lot of that, but it's the getting up every day and knowing your why. And also, I had a really good plan of what I wanted to do. And I'm one of those planners. I want to know 1 year, 3 years, 5 years. So I knew where I wanted to go, but I also knew I had to pivot and listen to, what the industry was telling me, what my clients were telling me, and create something that was organic and developed over time. So where we started versus where we are today is 100% different, from what I thought it was going to be, because we've developed over time. So I think you have to have that flexibility, the adaptability. I mean, with COVID, figuring out how to structure contracts, do business remotely. But I've always been a glass half full person. So I see things as an opportunity, when it comes in and we need to work remotely. Okay, how do we do that? And oh, hey, that opens up. I can bring people on my team that live in Arkansas or Oklahoma. And oh, maybe we don't need an actual office, because we can do this from home. So it's really turning lemons into lemonade when you have to. But to touch on your point of the awards I've gotten, I don't like to be the center of attention. I like to be more that person doing things in the background. So what was very touching about both of those is they were nominated by my peers. And I know who nominated me for one. I don't know who nominated me for the other. But to be nominated for something like that by somebody who sees what you're doing is very heartwarming. And it also is affirming that you're doing things the right way and that people are noticing. But back to your point about authenticity, I mean, it's when you are who you are and you're living and breathing this every day, like I do with my company and what I do, that's not even a thought in my head because it's just who I am. And I think it's a culmination of just all the things you've learned throughout your life, everything that you've been through to stand on your own and be where you are and be in the moment it's a very gratifying thing, but it's something it's funny. I just don't stop and think about it every day. I just go and chug and keep going. But one other thing I wanted to say was, very purposely, I knew that I was going to be a woman in kind of a man's world here. I'm the only female owner of a business of my type out there. And, we'd go to these conferences and you'd just be surrounded by a room full of men in navy suits or black suits or, like super business attire. So I remember my very first conference I went to after I started my company. I was shopping and I was like, I saw this bright yellow dress and I went, that's what I'm going to wear. And everybody was like, what? And I was like, I don't want to blend in. I want to stand out because not only do I feel like the service that we're providing and what I want to do is different than anything anybody's doing in our space, but you need to stand out and you can either try to blend in with everybody else or you can say, I'm setting myself apart. And so I very purposely, my logo is a unicorn, like it's kind of a play on that hard and soft, that feminine and masculine of, hey, I'm not afraid to say our logo is a unicorn, but it's a very fierce unicorn, like I'm willing to play with that. And you do have to have a little bit of confidence for that. Sometimes it is confidence I have to create. It doesn't exactly exist. I mean, I have to pump myself up. I have a little playlist I listen to before I do stuff. It's not completely naturally there, but it was like, I know I need to stand out. I know I need to be out there. I know I want to make a difference. And in order to do that, you have to put yourself out there. Like you can't be asked to do everything. Sometimes you have to volunteer to pay and go speak somewhere or do something so that people can hear your message. And nobody's a better salesperson for you than you are for yourself.
I just love everything you just said. One particular thing that really stands out is the fact that what you're doing is unique. You're not the mainstream. You're not doing what everybody else is doing. And so either you embrace it and acknowledge the authenticity of what you're doing, or just stay in the shadows and want to do it, but really not 100% embrace it. And I love that because especially just even like for me, sometimes it's just having that conversation with a peer. You're wondering like 1,000 times, should I post this on Facebook group and even ask this question? You're like, what's wrong with you? Of course. It's like, just do it. There's actually probably 100 of people that are wondering the same thing, and it's okay. And then also it's okay to just fully embrace yourself. And I think that's such a great message that you are sharing. And, for those of the listeners that are out there, you may not be in the oil and gas industry. You might be in another industry that might seem daunting to you, regardless of what the demographics are. For those people that are listening, Sarah, what would be some of your tangible tips that they can say, okay, this is what I'm going to do? And, just try to make that space, just try to make that first move and start creating that gap where I can fill it.
I think that one of the best tips, and in fact, I just got back from a trip with my girlfriends to Jackson Hole, and they're my high school girlfriends we've known for over 20 years. And, we talk every month. We have a Badass Mamas phone call. We're all over the country and, we're all in different industries. We have a police officer, an insurance vice president, a personal trainer, any industry that you're in, there's a lot of things that it doesn't matter what industry you're in, whether it's male driven, not. The point is that you are the only person who can advocate for yourself fully. And one of my biggest piece of advice would be to document your wins. So what you're doing, you're constantly building your own resume, and it's not for your next job. It's for you to acknowledge the things that you've done. And, are you aligned with what you want to be doing, who you want to be, where you're going. And in order to do that, you've got to take the time to actually stop and acknowledge that. So, whether that's a one day thing when you read a book, or if it's every day you're writing down your goals for the day, it's different for everybody. But I think you really need to be in tune with that. And how that translates into business is, one of my friends, they have semi-annual reviews. And so she's like, well, I get my review from my boss. He writes his comments, and then that's that. And I'm like, well, did you write any comments after his comments? And she's like, no. And I said, well, was there a box for it? And she said, yeah. And I said, that is your chance to write on your record. And you don't have to respond to his comments. That's your chance to go, here's what I think I accomplished this year. Here's my goals for next year. And my expectation is I want to be promoted in 12 months. What do I need to do to get there? Like, not just be passive, but to actually be proactive in your career, your goals, and in actually laying that out and asking for what you want. And I see this with women in particular, and I'm guilty of this myself, of just sitting back thinking we're going to get rewarded for doing a great job. And instead of going and saying, hey, I expect a raise, I expect a bonus. What do I need to do to get that? What are your expectations? Like, we just feel that we'll be rewarded when it's our time, and that's kind of not how the business world works. Those who toot their own horn the loudest are the ones who get ahead because they look like they want to. Mm-hmm. So, it's funny because I've heard several women say, oh, I can't do that. Well, yeah, you can. You can walk in and ask for a raise. You can ask to see your notes. You can add stuff to your employee file. You can advocate for yourself. And yeah, you can post stuff on LinkedIn and use your voice. And if people don't like it, then you're not in the right place,
Gosh, I love that, because I think that's so true. And I love how you just said you have to toot your own horn, because not because people see what you've done, but because they know that you want it more. And that's such a key piece right there, because a lot of times we feel so, oh my gosh, we're going to talk about ourselves. We're being so proud and all these negative connotations to talking about all the things that we've accomplished. Even a simple email, just sharing about yourself. You might think 5 times, well, should I write about these accomplishments? Should I write about what roles I play? But the answer is yes. You're creating your authority, and you're also telling people that you want it. You're enjoying what you're doing. You're embracing what you're doing. And that's such a great perspective to
proud and you love your job. Another great example is your LinkedIn profile. That is your working resume. So if you have won awards, put them up there. If you've been on a podcast, put it up there. Actually fill out the description under your job thing, because that's your picture to the world of people seeing who you are. And that's where you're able to showcase yourself, so to speak, without looking like you're tooting your own horn. That's just the facts right there. And a lot of people don't utilize that fully, and you don't know, because your next opportunity could come off of somebody seeing that post.
Gosh, great advice. Okay, so before we say goodbye, I have a couple more questions. And one of my questions is, what is your craziest experience? Challenging but crazy, and it's like one of your war stories, as we can call it.
Oh boy, there are a lot of them, but I would say one of my craziest stories is being put in the position where we find savings for people, but sometimes we also will find a big liability. And my expectation, growing up is always you do the right thing no matter what. So there's one particular client that I went to and said, hey, there is this huge liability. We've got to disclose this. And they said, no. And I said, we have to. It's the law, And they said, no. We just want you to file for the refund, but we are not going to acknowledge that. And, I said, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to walk away. I can't associate my company, my team, my firm with, just like a lawyer. Like I know something and I can't disclose it. I'm under confidentiality, and, you're my client. But if you're going to choose not to do the right thing, I have to walk away. And they're like, so you're going to walk away from this giant fee you would get from the refund because we won't do this. And I said, yeah, I am. And that's something I didn't expect, because I just like it doesn't compute to me that somebody would know they're doing something wrong and then choose to not fix it.
Yeah.
Money doesn't make the world go round. That's not the be all end all at the end of the day. That your integrity, your reputation, your team, how everybody feels, it's those moments that define you, and it's hard because you're running a business and you're going, this is our income, but no income is worth, breaking our integrity. So there's a lot of hard decisions like that have had to have been made in many aspects of the business. But that's one in particular that was really tough for me, because on one hand, it was a very easy decision, but just you can't not do the right thing. But it was hard from a business sense of, this is my company and I am walking away from a lot of money that I could get and no one would ever know, maybe. But it's, again, like, you have to live with yourself at night and make a stand in who you are. And that is also the beauty of owning your own company, is being able to make those decisions. But it's just one that, just assuming that people are always going to do the right thing and then they don't, catches you by surprise. And, the bigger the company, the more I'm surprised sometimes. But for the most part, I would say, there's 90% good in my job and only 10% of those war stories to go by. And I'm thankful for that. But also, we're very cognizant of who we take on and what we get into. But you still can't prepare for anything that comes up and they kind of shock you, and you got to stop and kind of take stock of yourself.
Wow. And so I'm assuming you walked away and they continued their route as well. They followed through with what they wanted.
They did, and there were consequences for them after that, which had nothing to do with me at all.
Yeah.
But, it was just something that can happen any day. I mean, our world is very black and white. There's compliance, this is accounting, it's reporting.
Yeah.
But I mean, people that sign severance tax returns to the state, for instance, Exxon paid $1 billion in gas severance tax last year. There's the CFO or the CEO is signing that return off saying, under penalty of perjury, this is correct. Well, if the state or the federal government comes and determines that's incorrect, that's a legal document that you can be taken to court for at the federal or the state level if it's not correct. Like this, I don't know that people really understand the weight of that and what that can equate to in the world. And so, to me, this is a big thing, even though in the oil and gas world, they're talking billions of dollars and maybe we're only millions of dollars on the back end, but it's still doing the right thing. And you want to be a steward for your shareholders when you're an oil and gas company or anything that you're doing,
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. And, at the end of the day, you have to take inventory of what your value systems are for your own company, and whether the actions of who you're working with or who you're collaborating with or anything like that align with that or not, and then take decisions accordingly. So I think that's a great example of that specific, I'm such a proponent of having a value system and having, personal values and how they translate into your business and how you show up. And then it's like a domino effect. And so it's really important. And so that's,
and that rolls into, same thing with my team is I get to choose my team as well. And everybody on my team either worked for me in industry or was a client of mine previously. And I know their value systems. I know who they are. I know their work ethic. I know their capabilities, their expertise. And that is important, is choosing your dream team. Before I even started my company, I wrote down a list of who my dream team would be. And every one of them work for me now. I mean, It took a little bit of time, but I guess my takeaway would be very purposeful in everything that you do. Have a plan, know where you're going, know why you're going there, what you're doing, how you want to do it, who you want to be, and how you want to present yourself, all of those little things matter. And
Mhm.
then sticking to that and having people around you who don't let you fall off the rails.
Yeah, great. And it's not a waste of time to actually sit down and write it out. It's not a waste
Oh,
of time.
oh, I've got, I have,
Okay.
it's funny, I have that all. I remember before I started, I wrote out like on a legal sheet of paper and I had grids and I had kind of just all these boxes with the team and, you know, what I wanted to do and how to, that it is. And some people I'm more visual, so I want to write it all down, but it is something that is worthy of time and intent.
Yeah, and ever so often coming back to it, I like to go back to it on an annual basis. Sometimes I feel like, oh my gosh, a little off track, and then I have to repurpose myself again. And so it might be more than once a year. My final question for you is, what's your anchor? What holds you steady?
Ooh, my anchor is my family because that's what I'm doing this all for. And I try really hard as part of owning a company to carve and make time out, not only for myself, my family, work, but my family is a larger thing. It's not just my son and my husband and my parents. My clients are my family. My team at Savvy is my family. It's that tight-knit circle of people who really matter to you and making sure that you're taking care of them, you're making them proud, you're doing everything that you can to do the best and be the best person you can be every day. And that, every day when my son comes home from school and he's just laughing and smiling and happy and I get to focus on him, that reminds me why I do all of this, because there's no point to working this hard and putting so much into it if you don't get to enjoy it and love your family and spend time with things. And so, that and just my faith and my higher power in myself and just trying to do the right thing. I think having those values that anchor you and having your family keep you sane and humbled.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. And I know that you're pretty busy on LinkedIn. So if anyone wants to connect with you, is it just Sarah Magruder on LinkedIn or?
It is, yeah. You can look at Sarah Magruder on LinkedIn, or Savvy OGC is our LinkedIn company page. So yeah, you can't miss me if I'm on there. And it's funny, in our little class of our 25 influential women, I'm like the motherboard, the networker for everybody, because keep touch with everybody, and I'm just I love being part of that group, and yeah, I like being connected with people and knowing what's going on and being able to help. And it's a little bit weird being out there so much sometimes, but I do think that it has a purpose, and I try to be purposeful about it.
Awesome. Well, I'll definitely put that in the notes below so there's easy access. But again, thank you so much, Sarah, for being with us today and sharing all of your wisdom and knowledge.
Thank you.